Episode 9 of Chief of War on Apple TV Plus serves as the explosive season finale, delivering the long-teased epic battle sequences while tying up key arcs around unification, betrayal, and the looming threat of colonization. The episode runs about 55 minutes and culminates in a visually stunning clash inspired by historical events from late 18th century Hawaii. It builds directly on the grief and divisions from Episode 8, where the deaths of Waine'e, Nahi, and Kupule left Kamehameha isolated and Kainana furious over his chief's pacifism. The volcano's eruption at the end of Episode 8 is framed as a divine omen, signaling the gods' involvement in the impending war. The broken alliances on the Big Island of Hawaii are the subject of the first scene of the episode. Holding fast to his Law of Māmalahoa, the Splintered Paddle, Law of Mercy and Protection for non-combatants, Kamehameha is still in shock from the massacre in Episode 7, Day of Spilled Brains, and the Grove attack. But Kainana uses force to force unification, teaching fighters, including a reluctant Heke, how to use the muskets he smuggled from his journeys around the world. Important roles are played by Kamehameha, Evelyn Kaluhiwa, and Kupuohi, Kainalu Moya, who encourage their husbands to make amends. The women's advice emphasizes the series' theme of female involvement in Hawaiian history and keeps the males from making snap decisions motivated by their egos. On Maui, meanwhile, Kiua, Moani Spencer, gathers troops under Kahekili's leadership for a preemptive attack after interpreting the volcano's rumble as Ku's, the war deity, favor. Betrayal simmer. Heke temporarily defected to seek support from Maui after his mother passed away, but his arc showed that he was devoted to Kamehameha. The term Black Desert alludes to the ash-strewn battlefields close to the exploding volcanoes, which were captured during actual Mauna Loa and Kilauea eruptions, as Momoa mentioned in interviews, signifying the charred ground of civil war. At Nuuanu Pali, the Valley of the Winds, the main war breaks out in a huge set-piece battle that pits Kiua and Kahekili's army against Kamehameha and Kainana's coalition. For the first time, Kainana uses the guns successfully, demonstrating his tactical prowess and turning the tide against conventional spear and club fighting. However, the battle is vicious and intimate. In a one-on-one duel, Kiua almost kills Heke, but Kainana steps in, reiterating his protecting role from previous episodes. The pandemonium is intensified by divine forces. Ash storms and lava flows are shown as interventions by Ku and Pele, the volcano goddess, obfuscating the distinction between godly and mortal battles. At last, paying attention to Kainana and Kamehameha, Kamehameha accepts his destiny as a unifier. Despite leading a decisive charge, he suffers a serious wound that forces him to face his mortality and the boundaries of mercy. This firmly establishes his transition from pacifist to conqueror, paving the way for a possible investigation of his entire rule in Season 2. In a heartbreaking turn of events, Kainana is deceived by a Maui spy, who is later exposed as a double agent from the ship intrigue in Episode 6. One of his own inexperienced gunmen shoots him with friendly fire during the conflict, forcing him to make a valiant last stand in which he covers Kamehameha's withdrawal. The unifying mantle is passed to Kamehameha as Kainana dies talking about the white ships, a reference to colonization by characters like Captain Metcalfe from Episode 7. It is terrible, as Momoa has described it, the ultimate horror of Hawaiian history, and it completes his path as the tragic visionary who sees the external threat but dies in internal struggle. In a contentious scene that splits the chiefs, Kamehameha's warriors capture Kiua alive but execute him off-screen. Kiua's last remarks, which blame Kahekili's greed for the island's divide, are reminiscent of historical narratives but have additional emotional weight. Future confrontations are hinted at when Kahekili retreats to Oahu. As regent during Kamehameha's recuperation, Kamehameha negotiates partnerships with Kupuohi. The episode concludes with a foreboding note: a European ship, commanded by a captain who resembles Metcalfe, emerges on the horizon as the islands start to come together under Kamehameha's rule, its sails billowing like a black desert of smoke. John Young, from Episode 7, steps in to warn them, but it's too late. The colonial conflicts of Season 2 are set up by the foreign menace Kainana dreaded. The conflict results in the death of minor characters, such as the Grove Overseer, signifying the loss of holy customs. While the prophecy from previous episodes is fulfilled ambiguously, Kamehameha joins the islands, but at the cost of innumerable lives, raising doubts about whether peace was ever possible. Heke lives and swears allegiance. Following his Māmalahoa edict, Kamehameha spared Captain Metcalfe and Marley in Episode 7, which resulted in the devastating attack on the village. Since his pacifist stance can be interpreted as a weakness that permitted the tragedy, his council is likely to challenge his leadership in Episode 8. The episode might examine whether Kamehameha changes or re-examines the Māmalahoa law in order to strike a balance between his principles and the necessity of defending his people against additional foreign assault. This can result in contentious discussions and a possible turn toward a more militant position. The loss of Vai and other villagers is likely to overwhelm Kainana, who was shown to be correct about the perils of putting her trust in Metcalfe. He may become more vocal in his demands for swift action against the foreigners, which could further aggravate Kamehameha's opposition to preemptive bloodshed. His relationship with Kamehameha's council may become even more complicated as a result of Kainana's seclusion brought on by his wife Kupuohi's betrayals and his tense connection with his brother Namek. Kamehameha's wife, Kaahumanu, finds herself torn between her husband's idealistic views and her own pragmatic views. She remains vulnerable in the courtroom because of her secret, which is that a prophetess predicted she would never bear Kamehameha's successor. Driven by political pragmatism and perhaps personal considerations, her increasing affiliation with Kainana in Episode 8 could result in important developments, such as possible betrayals or power maneuvers that alter the dynamics of the council. The British presence will continue to pose a serious threat, as seen by Captain Metcalfe's refusal to depart Hawaii. As the Hawaiian authorities struggle with the reality of foreign brutality and greed, Episode 8 might show preparations for open warfare. A change from diplomatic to armed resistance may be signaled by battle scenes or strategic preparation to oppose Metcalfe's men in this episode. As the penultimate episode of the 9-episode season, Episode May 8 finish with a big twist, such as a betrayal inside Kamehameha's council, a huge loss, or the start of a full-scale battle, given the series' tendency to end episodes with dramatic cliffhangers. The show's capacity to make viewers uneasy with cliffhangers has been observed by fans on sites like X, indicating that a gut-punching moment is probably in the works. Kainana may act independently, possibly attacking Metcalfe's men without permission or openly opposing Kamehameha's rule, as a result of his grief for Vai's passing and his vindication over Kamehameha's leniency. In the season finale, this can lead to a dramatic confrontation. She might make a crucial choice, like publicly supporting him against Kamehameha or disclosing her secret to obtain power, as a result of her fragile position and possible love tension with Kainana. Her role in the unification process might be redefined as a result. The presence of the sacred Nyo Grove points to a point where Hawaiian spirituality and the political and military conflicts converge. Kamehameha or Kainana's actions may be guided by a ritual or prophecy, which would further emphasize the show's emphasis on indigenous perspectives.